You thought you'd be making it to January without your annual Man of Passion video? Yes, again, Buckaroony, we got business. Now, there's not much I get excited about online because I'm kind of going for this despondent bad boy thing. And you know, I work that magic. You know, pussy stats don't lie, my friend. Yep, I've got high pussy stats. Wait, hold on, I guess you could interpret that differently. But yeah, you know, hard to get me that excited. So I hope you understand what it means when I say something like, I love Diamond is Unbreakable. Diamond is Unbreakable is the fourth part, arc, era of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure comic that ran in Japan from 92 to 96, written and drawn by Hirohiko Araki. The JoJo comics involve the hilarious, disturbing, exciting, sexy adventures of the Joestar family, who generation after generation get embroiled in supernatural conflicts and make their way out of them through a combination of punching things and supreme bullshit. How did he get away with that? By the third arc of the story, the characters started using invisible monster men called stands, created by their psychic energy to fight each other, each with their own special ability. And these abilities get pretty wacky. Part 4 deals with Part 2's protagonist, Joseph Joestar's illegitimate son, Josuke Higashigata. He uses his own Monster Man, Crazy Diamond, to fight other Monster Men users in his town of Morio, which is in Japan but conspicuously looks very un-Japanese. Him and his friends take on other residents who are using their newly acquired powers, all naughty-like and such. Anyway, I love this manga, and it's taken him a few years, but recently the anime adaptation of these proceedings has been adapted by Studio David, and we're going to be seeing how it measures up. Now, David Productions' approach to animated JoJo is to basically do a one-to-one conversion of the story. Nothing is dropped, and nothing is added, which in this case means I should probably pick between either analyzing how good of an adaptation it is, or reviewing the story as a whole, including the source material. But since I don't really give any shits, we're just going to be bouncing back and forth and mixing these topics into one big opinion mess, so buckle up, good boys, we're going in. Anime adaptations of long-running shonen manga can't help but be a bit bumblefucked compared to their comic book counterparts, while the manga author and his assistants get a week to a month to draw 20 pages of exquisite detailed art. Mwah. The poor anime fuckers are usually running around, coordinating with loads of groups of people, having to create 20 minutes of fully animated action with voice, dialogue, music, and sound effects to air every week, usually getting backed up until things are being finished at the last minute in non-ideal conditions. It's no surprise that one usually ends up looking a little better than the other. So when adapting, fighting this uphill battle, it's important to get the mood and style and themes of the original down so that it can overshadow the fact that we gotta get this shit fucking out the door, animated now! We don't have time to make it look as good as it should! We gotta get it out! I'm not saying Araki didn't struggle to make the original manga, he was probably under a lot of time pressure as well, but now he's kicking back with monthly releases of Part 8, so you know, that's not getting finished. If nothing else, David Production has been doing an incredible job of translating the spirit of the JoJo manga and making it shine in the animated medium. From the music to the sound effects to making sure the most poignant moments get the timing and care they deserve, David have a great understanding of what makes JoJo so special. Some things in this world just seem to work in tandem so beautifully, it's almost too good to be a coincidence. Sentient life forms and plants exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide to mutually sustain each other. The Earth rotates around the sun at the perfect distance to provide heat and light to the world without burning us. Lotus Juice did the Part 2 battle theme! Each protagonist has their own style, so when adapting, it's important they have groovy tunes that fit their personalities. Jonathan's battle theme is very heroic, very old school, well done. Joseph's Lotus Juice banger, of course, sounds like you just got tricked, which fits his prankster style. Jotaro's theme almost sounds a bit tribalistic for his brutal, uncaring beatdowns. Josuke has something similar, but a bit more refined than Jotaro, with a piano medley to make him a hint more fabulous. Beatdowns are what JoJo is all about, and Diamond is some of the best yet. You see, what differentiates JoJo from most other battle shonen stuff is while everyone has fantastical powers, most of the people who control them are just regular dudes, outside of like the vampire guys, of course. That means if someone is brutally beating an opponent up, the receiver of the beatdown is probably lost. It's not like Josuke has a power level of 5020, which means he can take 2700 damage before he's completely defeated. There's rarely any DBZ moments where someone gets fucked up and then the dust clears and he's okay because he's just super duper strong. Ho-ho! By the time the hero has outmaneuvered the enemy and is at that point of smashing their faces in, it's the end of the fight. So that's why it's always awesome to have that battle music to symbolize that release after being on edge for the whole battle. Because usually, when it's about to kick in, it's time to yell, "Oh shit, son!" When you hear that piano, Here it comes. Dun. Fights are not won by who can charge up their willpower the best, but by who's got the tricks, who's got the cunning, and who's got the skill. An enemy appears with an unbeatable looking power, and then the excitement of seeing how the hero will turn an absolutely dire situation around, or undercut the enemy with a ruse we didn't see coming, usually leading to a moment of, oh shit son! Sometimes these moments are clever and hilarious at the same time. Sometimes you're just like, oh, okay. Like when reading the manga, I had a really hard time figuring out how Enigma was defeated. His power is that he can turn you into paper and shred you if he finds out what you look like when you're scared. Yeah, anyway, that's one thing a moving adaptation can clear up, and they sure did clear it up for me. And I sure did go, okay. But even though I was going, okay, I was also going, oh shit son! And yeah, it was kind of bullshit. But even when this stuff is bullshit, it's bullshit in such a cheeky shit grin way that you can't help but be like, oh shit son! Even when dubious characters outsmarting each other always beats shonen, where it's just like, I won because I tried way harder than the other guy. Constipation sound! And if nothing else, they would do a fantastic job at pacing their fights so that the aforementioned feeling of tension and release is measured just right. It's great that that's the case because this is still a weekly TV anime and corners are gonna get cut. For some mad reason, they decided to do all 39 episodes in one go. And guys, it's like maybe you could have had a tiny break somewhere in there, I don't know. Everything else that had to be done to make this a bang-on adaptation was done right. But visually, via this medium on this timescale, it's impossible to get quite the perfect diamond adaptation we might be wanting. Even though everything else, pacing, acting, music is done bang on, you can't escape the fact that Harvest is CGI, and because I guess drawing the same thing too many times is maybe is hard. I'm no expert. What I'm saying is that it's never going to look quite as good as the old Stardust Crusaders OVA, because shit, man. I was savoring every second of the show, and even I was like, uh-oh, when Killer Queen was revealed. The main villain, Standarino, and he looked a bit like he had problems. But that's the crazy thing about this adaptation. It pulls you right back in the next episode with one of the best it's ever done. So, go figure that one out. The figuring out you have to do is that while the fast-paced action of the manga can only be replicated so well in a tightly budgeted weekly anime, emotional moments with not much going on visually can be elevated. So while one of the greatest action set pieces in comic book history, the Highway Star chapter, only looks alright here, other, more subdued moments where some real emotional shit is going down can really be expanded upon in a TV animation. Of course, the only reason I'm all sat here like, oh, this scene doesn't look as good as the image in the manga is because the Diamond anime has such a borderline psychotic adherence to the manga that some iconic still images are copied verbatim, and it's hard not to start drawing comparisons at that point. I just want to see these moments recreated with the best possible quality. I wish they had taken a break to make the action just a little bit better, or gotten a bit crazy with who they hired to direct when some of the real bizarre moments were going down. I might be sounding pretty harsh here, but it's only because I want to see Diamond remade visually to the goodest of possible greatness. But don't get me wrong, there are plenty of impressive moments and well-directed sequences within the animation that perfectly reflect the strange and borderline psychedelic style of the comic. This is definitely an example of a company who does really care about what they're adapting, trying really hard to make it work within the tight time frame they have, struggling occasionally to get things done, resorting to other studios for certain episodes and so on, the usual stuff. In terms of a Diamond anime, this is still probably the best result we could have hoped for being produced in the system it was. It's certainly not like some other anime adaptations where it looks like they just shut it down and nobody really cared too much. Now, I can kind of say I'm not keen on complete, utter 100,000,000% faithfulness at all times like this adaptation. Sometimes eliminating certain elements for the sake of pacing in a moving medium can be a good thing. Like this guy who gets fucked up by the main villain in the middle of the climax for the sake of a underwear joke. In the manga, it's just a few panels. You can read over it quickly and interpret it in different ways. But here it's like, man, did we really just pause to see a guy die by grabbing some panties? Usually a character getting killed by Kira is like a serious deal. That's why we want to fuck him up so bad. But here it's super goofy underwear, man. Ooh. Sometimes I think you have to look at something and see if it's really worth putting in when you're working in a medium with completely different rules for setting up tension and pacing. Also, whatever you cut out can give you time to animate other things better. Various things were mercifully not replicated exactly, like some of Araki's art style changes. So Araki sometimes likes to change a character design as the story goes on, you know, what you gonna do? In their Stardust Crusaders adaptation, David gave Iggy both his faces. But here everyone has the look they would eventually get, so no scary early Josuke and Tamami and Toshikazu are already shorties. Animation aside, the reason the Diamond is Unbreakable anime is still so good is because it's Diamond is Unbreakable. This is such a satisfying story. Friendship, honor, trust, a story of people coming together, becoming stronger and stamping out evil and injustice in their town. Every character gets a little character arc that all adds up towards the end until you just have one mega crew, the boys! The only character that gets a sort of long-term character arc is Koichi, who starts off as a nervous young lad and by halfway through the show is roasting the villain as he lays beaten on the ground in one of the best moments the show has ever done. When it comes to the villains, I've seen a lot of people compare them to the ones in the previous arc, Stardust Crusaders, and say they're like weaker and, you know, not as imposing. But as actual characters, I find most of them are fundamentally stronger. They actually have goals and desires and aren't just really evil guys who like Dio a lot. Except maybe for Akira and Red Hot Chili Peppers. Don't really know what his deal was. I'll let Araki explain this change himself.
I frequently get the comment that enemies in JoJo Part 4 are weak. I think my response to this criticism is quite clear from the work itself, but since I've heard the same complaints from the editorial staff, I'll answer it explicitly. I constructed Part 4 around the themes of mental and emotional weakness. The stands were created by exaggerating the viewpoints of characters consumed by their own flaws.
While Stardust Crusaders was a story about typical supervillains who wanted power, Diamond asks what would happen if regular people got stands. Petty people who maybe just want some cash, inspiration for their art, or just to get the dick. Their powers are a reflection of their worst traits. Their goals and dark feelings, ambitions gone into overdrive. Yeah, Persona fans, you can start thanking Araki for your entire series. The only reason Kira is the main villain of the part is because out of all the regular people who acquire stand powers, he just happened to be a serial killer, which makes him the biggest problem. Something that, did always bug me a little bit was the inclusion of Jotaro, the protagonist from the third arc. The really strong guy who can stop time. Thankfully, he doesn't overshadow Josuke too much, but because he's so powerful, it means they have to come up with a bunch of reasons why he just isn't around, so the weaker characters can get the spotlight. Like he's around the corner and can't hear them or something. I think that Jotaro Kujo and Joseph Joestar should have been combined in one character, called Joseph Joestar. Like, you could have made Joseph a little less old, but have him still be weaker than the main cast. And then we wouldn't have Jotaro lurking around with his really strong guy powers. And like, I get it, the chicks love Jotes, they want to have him beat them up and stuff. But you can go other places to see more Jotaro girls, I'm just saying. Diamond is considerably less brutal than other parts. Which, yeah, I know, people are still getting perforated here like quivering hymens, but the gang isn't quite as murderous as the ruffians in other arcs. It's about protecting the town. And that message is passed on through the characters who are defeated. A lot of villains live after their battles. The positive message of the protagonists is passed down to them so they can come back and have the chance of even saving the day themselves. Unless you fuck with Josuke's family, in that case, something worse than death might happen to you. The characters in Diamond spread positivity throughout the people they meet, which eventually becomes their greatest strength in the battles they fight, which of course is also a feeling that's transmitted to the audience. The final opening of the series epitomizes this. All the OPs are great in JoJo. Unlike a lot of running shonen that will just chuck on some pop song that has very little connection to the actual show, all the JoJo openings are tailor-made for their respective arc and jam-packed with insane amounts of detail and references to the manga that shows just how much the creators care about every little aspect that make the comic great. You can tell the openings in the final one, Great Days specifically, mean a lot to David, because they produced a version of it for the final episode where every previous performer for the JoJo openings returned to sing it, much like how they did with End of the World, the Joestars, baby! If that ain't dedication and passion to what you're creating here, I don't know what is. The first Diamond OP has a really funky vibe that fits with the fabulous new tone of this era of JoJo. The second one is a darker theme about how they need to find evil and take it out before it destroys the harmony of the town. And the final one exudes that positivity and love that these characters have for each other. Because when Araki shows the darker sides of these people by putting their flaws on display with their stands, he's also putting forward the idea that maybe, as long as we have a place and people to protect, we can maybe overcome those flaws and live for the betterment of our community. You can nitpick a lot of things. Why is Red Chili Peppers doing what he's doing? Why didn't Josuke just fix that phone with his powers instead of getting a new one? But nothing puts a dent in the passion the characters bring out in the weirdest and craziest scenarios Araki comes up with. Sometimes you just have to ask how Araki gets away with some of the things he puts in here. Man, it's like we've got two generations of JoJos here, son and estranged father, Joseph and Josuke. Time to have a heartwarming chapter about them bonding. And what adventure do they go on? They find an invisible baby? But it's still great, and the development of the characters and their bond is still just as potent. The anime does add one significant thing, a little montage onto the end of the final episode, and for fans of the original like me, that was worth the whole experience alone. I could talk about DIU forever. The way it subverts expectations at almost every turn, all the little ways each character's powers are used when you don't see it coming, it's brilliant. Diamond is Unbreakable is one of my favorite stories, and getting to experience it again here is a treat. Looking forward to that Golden Wind adaptation. Just make sure you take a break, maybe, while you're making that one, guys.